Hello, and welcome to the Independent Section program series. This series will be giving folklorists and other cultural professionals an opportunity to increase their skill set and have access to resources to build upon their practice and their profession. This is the second in a series of programming that we've been doing. The first one was done by Brad McMullen, and that was reaching out to arts organizations that hire folklorists to do work. It was a fantastic one, and that one is available on YouTube. This particular program is going to be a really exciting one, the work of life. But before I get into that, I want to let you all know that this month we're also going to have another program series, Sue Alaterio, and she's going to be doing taxes and rate setting. And think about that. As an independent contractor, you want to know how to set your rate so you're getting your fair share and you're being compensated for the intimate and engaging work that you do. So now, my name is William Patterson. I'm an independent folklorist, and I am the program manager for the program series in the independent folklore section. And my partner here, please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Dietz, and I've been a folklorist for many more decades than I care to count. I spent 30 of those years working as a folklorist in for-profit organizations as a consultant. I'm also a best-selling author and TEDx speaker, and so as William says, both of us are here to talk about how to talk about yourself as a folklorist to expand your opportunities, whatever opportunities you would like to create for yourself, whether it be with arts councils, with other nonprofits, or moving into the for-profit world.
Yes. So the title of this particular program, which is one that's dear to my heart and Karen, is The Work of Life. And I'll never forget when I was in undergrad school taking a class called Urban Sustainability, which is basically the sustainability of cities incorporating all the important aspects of the natural environment and not exhausting those resources. And my professor said this, and I'll never forget it, is that most people will have one of these three at least. One is a job. You can think about a security guard or maybe a manager at a fast food chain. The other would be a career, an attorney, a doctor, maybe finances, electrician. And the one that struck me the most that I'll never forget was purpose. And when we think about purpose, we understand that there's three things that has to be involved if you are working within your purpose, which, if you are, you're fortunate. And those three things come with this. One is something that you've been passionate about your whole entire life. Two, you have a natural talent for it, right? And three, which I think is the most important, just so you know that you're working in your purpose, it fulfills a need within society. So through this programming series, what we're going to do is help you learn how to talk about yourself as a folklorist to expand your opportunities and attract the type of work you desire and want. Next slide, please.
Yeah. Oh, before we move though, William, I want to point people to the link that we have on this front page, and I also put it in the chat, so hopefully y'all can copy it in some way. And from that link, you'll be able to download not only this PowerPoint, but the tools and the workbook we have for you here. And we titled this The Work of Life because, well, for one, when I started out, it took me years to figure out how to talk about folklore in the for-profit world so that I could get work, so it was deemed as valuable. And I don't want anybody to spend all those years it took me to figure out how to do it. We wanted to give you some tips and some steps and a workbook and some tools here to help you do that. And we did this with a live audience, but guess who? Me, forgot to turn on the recorder in time. So William and I are re-recording this so it can go on our YouTube channel for the Independent Folklorist section, and you have access to all of these tools and the PowerPoint and the recording for any time you want.
Fantastic.
All right, next slide, right? Here we go. So what is the work of life? Well, my favorite quote, is from John Ruskin from the 1840s, who was like the influencer of his day. And he wrote a book called The Seven Lamps of Architecture. And here's the quote that I pulled from it and why I think this is important to share with you. He says, "It is that life." This is an older language, right, from the 1840s, so hang in there with me. "It is this life of custom and accident, which many of us pass much of our time in the world, that life in which we do what we have not purposed, and speak what we do not mean, and assent to what we do not understand. That life which is overlaid by the weight of things external to it and molded by them instead of assimilating them. That which instead of growing and blossoming under any wholesome dew is crystallized over with it as with a hoarfrost and becomes to the true life what an arborescence is to a tree, a candid agglomeration of thoughts and habits foreign to it, brittle, obstinate, and icy, which can neither grow nor bend, but must be crushed and broken to bits if it stands in our way. All men and women are liable to be in some degree frostbitten of this sort. All are partly encumbered and encrusted over with this matter. Only if they have real life in them, they are always breaking this bark away in noble rents until it becomes, like the black strips upon the birch tree, only a witness of their own inward strength." So that's sometimes how we have to think about learning how to talk about ourselves as a folklorist, is that it's the work of life. We will get better at it as we go along. We will learn from what works, what doesn't work. We will change how we speak about our profession and our own personal work, depending on who our audience is, who the organization is, so that we can be articulate, even more articulate about what our work is. We have lots to share with you about how to have that happen. All right. So, ready to go on, William?
Yes, that was fantastic too. Yes.
Let's go.
Okay. Why, William and Karen? Why are we here? You know, it's interesting because as folklorists, we understand that the work we do is intimate, right? And that there's always a process of your practice evolving. It never stops because of your experiences, the people that you're able to meet, come in contact with, and sometimes build friendships. So when we think about this work, we understand that it's connected directly to our lives, right? It's not just about going to do something to generate income so you can live, but actually doing something that expresses who you are through your work. So it's connecting you not only to income, but it's also connecting you to the rest of the world. And this is how you are expressing yourself to the world. So this is important. And everybody tune in. I think you're going to enjoy what we have for you. Karen?
In fact, the whole independent folklorist section, our purpose is to help open up more opportunities for you. And so we see this workshop as being really important in order to help you and to get that piece of work done. So that's our purpose of today. And I will say that one or two of the people who took the workshop initially, when I flubbed up the recording, one of the questions they had, okay, but what are the actual opportunities? And I want to say that when we were at AFS just last week, and the independent section Folklorist did their panel, there were 3 of us talking about different ways to think about folklore, and we shared the different ways that we have worked in for the for-profit world as folklorists. And go and on our YouTube channel, we're going to re-record that panel so that we can open that information up to all of our section members. And so stay tuned, right? Because that is part B. Like, it's hard to figure out what's part A and what's part B because they go so well together, right? But here we are with our first step. So here's the agenda for our workshop. We're first going to talk about the commonalities between nonprofits and for-profits, because we do think that they're very different. And yes, they do have some differences, but there's a lot in common with them. And so if you're already working with nonprofits, it'll be easier for you to slip over into for-profit work because you'll see the commonalities that they have. We're also going to talk about the 6 ingredients to discovering how you want to talk about folklore and your work, because we're all unique, right? And we all bring our own unique talents and skills to whatever project we're working on. And so it's really about how you want to talk about your work. So we had some discussions during the workshop, and we also have the tools and worksheets that I mentioned before. At the end, we'll do a quick review. There'll be some Q&A, and then we'll close. Well, Q&A will have to be send William and I in an email, right? Glad to help you with any question you have. All right, is that fair to say, William?
Yes, yes, it is. Looking forward to that part as well.
Yeah, me too.
Okay,
All right, here you go.
Let's dive in. So this is a quote by Ben A. Botkin, a very intriguing and well-known folklorist. It implies a lack of faith in your field and profession, not seeing its relation to the life around you. So this goes back to what I was saying a couple of slides ago previously, that especially as a folklorist or any type of individual that's working in the cultural field, you're touching what's happening in the moment. One of the 12 pillars of sustainability, when we think about environmentalism and managing our resources, yes, water, land, air, all of that is important. But when we think about urban sustainability, sustaining cities so future generations can have the same quality of life and resources we have, one of the pillars is cultural sustainability. So as folklorists, what we tend to do, we tend to focus on relevant cultural expressions, right? And so when you're building your folklore practice, remember, you're building something that is happening right there in that moment, and it's connecting directly with the people and life happening around you. So that being said, you want to be intentional, and you want to be ethical, and you want to make sure that you're doing things that represent not only yourself, but the profession. Thank you. Next slide,
Great.
please.
I love that. I love that. All right. So what is common between nonprofit and for-profit worlds? Well, in the nonprofit world, everybody's dealing with budgets and resources. They do need to generate revenue to keep the organization moving and humming along, and to offer grants and projects to people like you. Another challenge that a nonprofit has is getting great people to work within their organization, and that also they have and desire an impact in the world. And the for-profit, look, it's exactly the same. They have budgets and resources they have to deal with. They have revenue that they need to generate. Challenge is getting great people to work with them. and they're very concerned about their impact in the world. And yes, there are differences, as I mentioned, but it's great to know that there is this commonality between both worlds. William, did you want to add anything to this?
I would love to. And so we want you all to think in a different way. Look at the nonprofit world and the for-profit world as being two options that are accessible to you, right? It's been traditional that most folklorists and people who work in the cultural practice tend to lean towards the nonprofit world, but the for-profit world is a resource that has not been tapped into fully, and it's a resource that folklorists need to explore because we can start to shift the perspective and also add that quality of insight and work to the for-profit world. So think about it in the sense that we're in the nonprofit world and there are things that we're doing and we've been doing, but the for-profit world needs some of that we've been doing in the nonprofit world. So those commonalities are alike. And my partner here, Karen, has informed me greatly some of the things she's done in the for-profit world. And I think moving forward, as folklorists, we need to really start focusing and exploring what the for-profit world can do. Because, as Karen said earlier, it's the same structure in terms of budgets, resources, generating revenue, getting great people to work with you, and that impact in the world. So our influence is needed in the for-profit world as well.
Just as an example, many of my projects when I worked in the for-profit world had to do with culture. And I was assessing the organization's culture and reflecting back to them where their strengths were, where their weaknesses were, where things had broken down. And my reason for being there was to help them strengthen their culture, knit it together more better, and also to help train the leaders and managers on how to keep it going, right? How to keep that culture strong and humming along really well. And so my skills as a folklorist were incredibly valuable and actually had an edge over other people who were doing similar kind of work in organizations. And so I just offered that to you as a way, something to think about. Right? I even used all of my vernacular architecture and material culture skills every single day when I was working in an organization. So anyway, here we go. So let's talk about the 6 ingredients for talking about folklore and your work. So the first ingredient is really a mindset. Now, when we're shifting mindsets, this can often take a while. So give yourself some space to work through some of these pieces, right? The first mindset is moving from transactional work to relationships. So transactional work is when you apply, an RFP is sent out, you respond to the RFP, and you know how many hours you're going to work, what they're going to pay you, and what the project is all about. And you walk in, you do the work, you're done, goodbye. All right, so that's a transaction, as opposed to a relationship, which is an ongoing relationship that you have with the Arts Council, so that you are there to offer insights and opportunities for additional work that they could be doing or that you could be helping them with. So, second mindset is adopting a circle economy model. And now, what the heck is that? Well, William is going to do a great job in the next upcoming slides on talking about what that is and how it applies to your work so that your work sustains you over time. And then the third mindset is shifting from your education and skills or role to the value you bring. When you say you're a folklorist to somebody who doesn't know what folklore is, it doesn't mean anything. When you say, oh, I'm a cultural sustainability expert, all of a sudden you speak to the value you bring. And that's very different than how we're used to thinking about our work, much less talking about our work. So we have some worksheets that help you work through that. And then also it's sharing about your work in a way that attracts the work you want to do. And so this is about titles and also about other ways you convey your value. And we want to be careful that we actually want to get the work we want to do, not the work that we'll settle for. And we want to make that, distinction. And yes, there will be times when you need to pay the mortgage and you'll take a contract that you may not like, but right. That's not the way we want it to work. We want it to work so that you're sharing about your work in ways that attracts the work that you want to do. Right? A good example is a friend of mine, and I've known her for years, has specialist in foodways. So she wants to do more work with cruise lines, and so she part of her description of what she does is, helping cruise lines understand and bring value to their passengers around educating them about different cultural foodways as a way to on tours and what have you, right? When they're at sea, or no, not at sea, but when they're visiting the ports. So, all right. Anything else, William?
No, that's fantastic. I love those ingredients. I think for our audience, keep in mind these ingredients will allow you to scale your practice. So
Yeah,
they're really important.
that's a good way to talk about it. All right, I think you're up next with the circular economy.
Yes. Now, so when we think about the circular economy, remember this model is pulled from nature, the natural environment. So when we think about an economy in terms of the United States, our economy is a linear economy, right? But it's built off supply and demand. So supply and demand. The whole philosophy of supply and demand is if there is a demand, we can supply it, but that connects to resources being unlimited, which is false. So the supply and demand model is not a real model. So when we think about a circular economy, we're pulling from nature. And in a circular economy, there's no such thing as waste. Every single thing is used. So in nature, everything is used so the ecosystem or the environment can continue to function and replenish itself. And even when there's natural disasters, think about resiliency. You've seen forest fires, and then maybe a couple years later, you'll see trees growing and resprouting. So the one thing that's interesting about nature is when it has a full diverse or biodiversity in an ecosystem, it can deal with natural disasters and bounce back. So the highest level of this is something like a swamp. A swamp has everything. It has sun, it has humidity, it has water, it has trees, it has a diversity of animals. So that's the highest level. So now we're going to take that circular economy model and apply that to our practice, right? So when we apply that circular economy to our practice, what we're going to see is how you're able to build your practice so there's no waste and you're able to function and sustain that practice over the lifetime of not only your profession, but leaving behind a profession that other organizations will say, oh, I had a folklorist or a cultural specialist work with me on this particular project, and it was fantastic.
Love that. I love everything you said.
Okay, now this is interesting. So now we're getting to it. This is how you build your practice. You're going to map how your work is a circular economy. So the first thing that you're going to have to do is relationships. So this is going to entail what? Networking, meeting people, having conversations, informal conversations. And you're not pushing to get the work. You're figuring out, is this someone that you want to work with? Does this person want to work with you? And is there a project that can benefit everyone involved? the community, the organization, and the folklorist. So you want to build that relationship, and you want to build that relationship the right way so you can continue, if possible, to do work with that individual or organization. So once that relationship has been built, that's your foundation. Then you're going to move over to that relationship becoming client or participant. Now think about this before we get to the client or participant. If you're building a relationship with someone, that person or organization might not become a client or participant, but they might recommend you to another organization or individual, and that's how you're building that circular economy. So keep that in mind. You don't necessarily have to have that individual organization become a client or participant. So when we think about client and participant, the client wording is used for the for-profit, participant is used for the nonprofit, but they're interchangeable, right? So then we go to projects, and this is interesting because you can do some really beautiful projects. Now, to do that, you're going to have to make sure that you're consistently building up your skill set and evolving as a folklorist. That's how you get these amazing projects. So, like Karen spoke of, she had a friend who worked on a cruise line and was able to get these informal and formal stories and interviews with people. It shows you the invisible impact that happens behind the scenes. That's an impactful, beautiful project, believe me. So you can get these strong, creative projects through taking your time and taking these steps. Then what populations are you serving? Once again, when you're doing this type of work, you have the opportunity to meet people that you would have never met in most jobs, most 9 to 5s. And also, because you're meeting these people, you're not only being impacted by the conversations and interactions, but vice versa is happening if you're building your practice the correct way and always acting on principles and ethical values. That's important. So what populations are you serving? What populations are you affecting? The organization is an audience. The community that organization might be working with or for is another audience. And then you have yourself and the people that you'll meet this way, that way, depending on what you're doing and where that particular project takes you. And then another thing that's really important is the outcome. You need to record and understand what was the outcome in this particular project. What happened? We'll speak about it later on as well, but I just want to give one example is that I did a project with Air and Space Museum, and it was interesting to me that I'm doing another project with them, and I saw the shift. The shift was done through conversation that Air and Space Museum is known for giving you information and factual information, and now they want to shift to more of a cultural experience of what's actually happening instead of just giving you factual information. That is an outcome. They want to present their audience, which is the world, because everyone, when they come to Washington, D.C., wants to come to Air and Space Museum. So now they're going to be presenting work from a cultural lens, which can be impactful in terms of not only your trajectory as a folklorist, but the trajectory of that museum. What would they want to do differently in the future compared to what they've done prior to having worked with a folklorist? So this is a circular economy. There's no waste. You want to be mindful of every individual that you're interacting with, and you want to always keep in mind that you want to do your best work and always present quality. So the cultural specialist, educator, or folklorist coming behind you can walk into a situation and be received with open arms. Next slide, please.
Great. And I want to point out that
Yes.
you have worksheets here, right, in your workbook, pages 3 and 4, so that you can start mapping out your circle economy. And it doesn't matter if you can't fill it out completely yet. We want you to get used to the idea and thinking of your practice as a folklorist as a circular economy model. All right, let's go. So the third ingredient is, what are your values and ethics? And this is worksheet number 7. Now, when I started out in the for-profit world, and this was in the 1990s, I had to figure out pretty quickly, right, the values I wanted my clients to embody. Right? I knew what my values were as a folklorist, but what values that I want my client to embody. And I'm going to stop the share here and show a screen that I shared at the conference about the ethics and values that I put together. And so let me do that. And I'm going to share again. And here we go. So these ethics, this is just to give you an example so you can start thinking about the ethics and values that you want your clients to embody, right? I needed everybody that I worked with to be open, curious, and respectful. Right? I wanted everybody to have a learning and growth mindset, right, as opposed to a stick in the mud mindset, right? I wanted people that to work with that had both humanity and empathy. And there are a lot of people out there like that. I also wanted to work with organizations that were more relationship oriented and weren't transactional, because all you get is one-off contracts and then you have to start overall again, and it's not feeding that circular economy, right? No box checkers. What the heck do I mean by that? Well, I learned this after a few contracts. And what that means is I had a client who the leaders in the top leaders in the organization said, okay, we see this problem that is in your area. We want you to go fix it. Do whatever you need to do to go fix it, and hire people if you need it, like outside consultants. So they happened to hire me. And we did all this work together, and it finally dawned on me that they weren't really willing to make the actual changes, but they wanted to tell their higher ups that, yes, we are working on it. So they just wanted to check that box, right? And they weren't really invested in doing too much else. And I also wanted them to have ethics that guided them, right? And then these are also the ethics and values that guided my relationships with colleagues. I wanted great colleagueship, and I wanted to be about helping each other. I needed colleagueship to be open and sharing, where we were up-leveling the quality of all of our work together. So no hiding behind, oh, this is my stuff, you can't share it. No, you can share it. You just have to tell them where you got it from, right? You have to name me. You have to tell people how to reach me, right? And that means citing and promoting each other and being very respectful of each other's work. So I'm going to stop that share, but I hope that helps you think about what your values and ethics want to be.
I'd like to add something too. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
What Karen just showed was a very important part of this process, that everyone you have to buy in. It's a different way of working with people. You have to be able to work with others, be transparent, but also intentional in terms of how you're perceiving the people that you're working with, right? Sharing that information, always coming to a project with an open mind of how can we build and do things together on a higher level. So here's something to keep in mind in terms of working together. If I'm coming to a project, I already have an idea of what I want to do, how I think the project might look. As a folklorist, that's what I have to do, period, right? And sometimes you might get 80, 90% of the way, and sometimes you only might get 10, 15% of the way, whereas you're just assisting the organization or community. But that organization or individual has an idea of what they want to see as well, right? And this is why working together, being intentional and transparent is key. Because sometimes when these two separate entities come together, there's something created called the third wave. And that is when the two entities meet, they both have separate ideas, and through transparent, intentional, ethical conversation, there's a third wave that appears that's something brand new and even more beautiful. And remember, not only are you creating something that's going to work and benefit you both, but you're also taking an experience that allows you to grow as an individual with you when you're not even dealing with that project anymore. So you're getting multiple uses out of it, and that's what we mean when we talk about a circular economy. There are other things happening, intangible things that you can't notice at first. Down the road, you do notice them, and you say, this is how I want to present my work, and this is how I want to attract the work that I want to do to me. Please.
Right, exactly. I've been practicing the third way game for decades now, and it really works. It really works. Now we have a worksheet here for you. I separated out values and ethics on the off chance that we have some values and we have some ethics, and they're maybe a little different from each other. And you can incorporate them however you feel is important for you in your practice. So you can go to the page 7 in your workbook and start filling these charts out. All right, let's keep going. All right, the fourth ingredient is your skill set. So this is page 8 of your workbook, and the worksheet is on page 8. And actually, this is what we've given you is a tool. It's in that link that has the PowerPoint and the workbook. It's called the Sample Folklore Skills Overview Tool. It's important that you understand what skills you really have to offer. And we're all human beings. We cannot see the forest for the trees. I've never been able to create a good list of my skill set unless I had somebody else provide me some additional ideas. And so what we put together for you was a Sample Folklore Skills Overview tool. And we created this tool from having ChatGPT survey all the different types of occupations that folklorists are in, all the different industries that we're in, museums, archive work. I mean, it goes. The list was a good lengthy list, and then we asked what to list all of the skills that folklorists need to have in any of these positions. And it's not the perfect tool. It's an idea generating tool. So you can say, oh God, I forgot about that skill, right? And didn't realize that was one thing that I could put down. Or you say, well, no, I think I would tweak this skill that's in this list and call it something else. And I go, yeah, more power to you, right? So use this tool as a guide and an idea generating, right, opportunity. So see what skills you already have and get ideas for skills not on the list. And then follow the directions in the worksheet to identify your skills. And you might be pleasantly surprised at all the things that you know how to do.
And I would like to say this, Karen, if I may, is that when you think about your skill set, think about macro, micro, macro, documenting, macro, interviewing, macro, being able to engage with the community. And then think about micro, being meticulous, having patience, being a good listener. These other skills that play within the macro skill set, right? And here's something else I want to share for people so they can have this and know that this is something that they need to really try to pursue. Everyone has certain talents, and a lot of times we know our front level talents, the talents that are obvious to us, right? We know what those talents are. Some people can play piano, some people can sing, but there are as many hidden talents that you have, and the only way you're going to be able to figure out what those hidden talents are is something you're thinking about that you've always thought about doing. Go out there, make sure you find you a good instructor that you can pay, and I guarantee you, as you're going through the process with that instructor, they're going to be telling you how good you are at what you're doing. And that's how you're going to discover, oh, I had a hidden talent that I wasn't aware of. And if not for me thinking to myself, oh, this is something I've always wanted to do and doing it, but also getting an instructor in that classroom. I'm not saying nothing's wrong for classroom, but oftentimes when you have a hidden talent, an instructor can work with you one-on-one and they're able to connect and see each and everything. It's almost like you going to the same masseuse all the time instead of going to different masseuse, eventually that masseuse learns your body and they know exactly what to do to make you feel the way you need to feel. Thank you.
Right. Absolutely. Great. I love it. Great examples. All right. Let's continue on to the next slide. All right. So the fifth ingredient is sharing the results you produce. Now, many people don't know how to do this. I've worked with people from all walks of life in the for-profit world. And for many years, I would lead a workshop for executives who are out of work. And I would say, well, what kind of results did you produce? And they go, well, we got the project done. I dig down a little deeper and I learn that the project, if it did come in on time, they were going to experience severe financial penalties from the client for being late. And so they took this one manager and said, okay, your job is to make sure, do whatever you need to do to make sure that you come in on time and on budget with this project so we can avoid all the millions of dollars of fines that that could happen. So, push came to shove and he did it. And so I asked him how long it took. He had 3 months, right, to turn this whole thing around. He had a great team to work with. They did it all, right? And then I asked him, well, how much money did you save the company by doing that? He said, oh, $1 million. And I go, and you don't think to talk to share with that with anyone that you actually worked on a project and helped save that company $1 million. And that is an amazing result. And that is the value, the kind of value that you bring, right? Now, you're not going to have an example like that, but you do have examples. And so we asked people in the discussion group to think about one of your favorite folklore projects and to ask yourself the following questions. Well, in this project, what issues did you help people with? Right? Oh, I help people become more visible with their artwork, their traditional artwork. All right, next project, what outcomes did the people in your project experience? Oh, because we hired them as folk artists to come into this festival, right? They were able to generate more money. And you can actually think about, well, how much money, right? How much did we give them a 10% boost in their income that year? In X project, what were the outcomes for the organization? Oh, because of this festival, we increased revenues by 20% because we had more artists. Our outreach was bigger that year. And then in X project, what was most valuable for you? What was your biggest takeaway from this project? How did you feel about it? What made you proud about it? And what was most valuable for the people you served? And then the last question is, well, after going through all of that, you should have some idea about what your superpowers are as a folklorist. Great to know what those are. One of my superpowers is listening. And I try to get better at that every single day, and some days are better than others. But I do know it's one of my superpowers because people tell me, oh, you are such a great listener. Well, I hope so. Especially in the times when it counts, right? So, what did you want to add, William?
I did, Karen, you're saying some wonderful things. I think everyone who's listening, what Karen is offering you is a way to understand and record the tangible benefits you get from working on projects in terms of outcomes. This is a game changer. When you go into a project, think about what shift happened from you working on that project and what change happened with that individual or organization that you can say, well, this is what happened because of X, Y, and Z. That is important. That's thinking and moving in a progressive direction. And that's something that is extremely valuable.
Right, it really is. And so this takes time. I want you to spend some time on it. And as you think about it, you'll get more ideas, right? And it's an incredibly valuable experience, and it will really boost your own, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I actually did that, right? Those are some of the outcomes that I produced. They're pretty cool. And then the next worksheet is about how to quantify some of your results. Now, this is step 2. Do the page 9 first and do page 10 second. And this is because it's harder to do. It takes more work to noodle this through. But when I moved from teaching at Penn in the folklore department as a ABD student, teaching folklore courses to undergraduates, when I moved from there, I wanted to move into the for-profit world, and I moved into training, which is like the closest, way to slide over, closest discipline to slide over into in the for-profit world. And I did this for myself because I needed to demonstrate my value so that I would get hired. And I realized that when I went into training and I had spent a few years there, I calculated that I had actually had and delivered over 10,000 hours of training. And I had trained well over 2,000 people. So when I wrote my cover letter, right, when I talked about what I did, I would say to somebody, oh, well, maybe you need someone like me. I've got over 10,000 hours in training, and I've trained over 2,000 people. They want to know more, and then they'd hire me. And so anyway, it's a good example, and here are some ways to think about it. Like, how many people did you interview, right? Or how much did you increase contacts in a community? Let's, for example, how much money did you save the nonprofit by working more efficiently than somebody else who's less trained? Right? How much did you expand access to traditional artists in the community? And what did you sustain, right? What did you help sustain, and by how much? And some of these are really good educated guesses, right? But you should feel confident in those educated guesses because you did the work. And then maybe you updated something that increased, the ability for the public and researchers to access those archived materials. So here's some examples, and I think this is really important, and it will really help you talk about your work in ways that immediately people want to say, oh man, I could use you. Anything else you want to add, William?
Everything you're talking about is so vital to becoming the folklorist you want to be. You have to really think about this the same exact way Google, the same exact way Apple. You as a folklorist, that's what you are, right? And so you have to figure out and think about, well, what can I do? Volunteering sometimes helps because that puts you in a position not only to network, but to improve a certain skill set. But also thinking about what things do I need to do to become the complete folklorist I want to be. Because if you If you're doing the things you need to do, I guarantee you're going to have projects come to you. Believe me, Karen and I are telling you the truth. If you're working and building yourself and being really focused on becoming better and not complacent, you're going to find yourself attracting the type of work you want. And more so than anything else, you will be prepared for the opportunity and it will not pass you by because you're constantly working, building upon your practice, adding additional skills, and doing the things you need to do to come with a complete package.
Exactly. And the truth is, you work on projects. You always have results. We mostly ignore those for ourselves. We don't talk about them. We don't think about them. We don't try to articulate them, and we don't try to quantify them. And we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by doing that, right? Because it's much harder to convey your value just by saying, oh, yeah, I worked on this really cool project. But what happened? We want to know what happened.
What happened? Yes.
All right. The good that came out of the work that you did. That's what we want to know. All right. Phew, let's go on. The
And
6
this is
ingredients. Yeah, this is another one. You want to talk about this, William?
I would love to. Yes. So this goes back to what Karen is saying when you're quantifying your results, when you're going through the process of really being intentional of how you're presenting the work you can offer. What's important and what you have to do even before you get to those other steps. What is your title, right? How are you promoting yourself so other people, organizations know, well, that's interesting, and I think I might want to hire that person. So the title is your introduction, right? It's just like first impression. Your title is your first impression. So when you think about titles, you can think about being creative with your titles. Cultural educator, cultural strategist, there are so many different things you can say that speaks to the work that you're doing outside of saying folklorist, which a lot of people have difficulty, understanding. But also remember, whatever your title is, you need to be able to convey exactly what you are able to provide concisely. There shouldn't be any stumbling around or pauses. You know exactly what you want to say and build upon that by talking to other colleagues, but also being introspective and thinking, what would make sense to you if you were the outside looking in and you approach that organization in person. So think about what your title and be creative with it. Please, Karen, I hope you have something to add as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So for many years, I had to figure out what to call myself, and introducing myself as a folklorist never worked because people didn't know what it was. And then I had to go into a lengthy explanation. I have got a lot of traction when in the early days, I worked in oral narrative in organizations as a way to tap into their culture. I did more early in the days. I did actual, much more ethnographic work around the culture, and then moved over more into actual oral narratives as a reflection of what was going on in the culture. I found the narratives gave me a lot more material and information about what was really going on than some of the other kinds of assessments I was doing. And that's a whole nother like 20-minute talk about how all that happened. But eventually, in the early days, I was a business storyteller and leadership consultant. And now, these days, I'm just a narrative strategist and coach for leaders. And that helps me get into the organization, deal directly with the leaders in the organization, and help them strengthen their culture through the use of oral narratives. So that's my shorthand for how I promote my work. And I make it relevant to those listening to me because most of them are leaders and managers, right? And I want to be attractive to them. Oh, yes, I can help you to not be boring when you speak. So, yeah, that's it. So we have a worksheet for you on page 11, and we have another tool for you to use, because when I've asked folklorists, give me your title, right? They say folklorist or professor or independent folklorist or archivist, right? These really are not too helpful in terms of promoting you and your work. So what we did again was ask ChatGPT for a sample folklore titles and created a tool for you out of that. Again, we added in as many kinds of work that we knew folklorists did, and then we asked ChatGPT to find all the titles that people call themselves in the kinds of work that we've listed. And so again, we have a tool for you. It's not, the be all and end all of folklore titles. It is simply a tool for you to get ideas from, to craft a title for yourself from. You can combine the words that you like in different ways. And we explain all of how to do that on the worksheet using that tool. Because I would kind of joke around with the folklorist who said, "Oh, you're a folklorist." I go, "Oh, okay, well, what does that mean? What do you actually do?" Right? And then it was a big, long explanation. But on your business cards, on your website, and in any social media, we want you to be able to use a title that actually helps promote your work and gets you more work. All right. Think we're done with that one?
Yes, I do remember when we did the live workshop that there was someone who uses a different title depending on the organization that they're trying to get work from. So there's another option for you as well.
Right. And I've had to do that myself, right?
Mm.
When I work with scientists and engineers, right? I talk about myself as a communication and narrative specialist.
Mhm.
When I'm working with the like something like the cruise industry, right? I talk about myself as a narrative specialist for understanding your customers,
Mm.
right? So these are the little ways that we can tweak things. It depends on who you're working for. We don't want you to have, 20 different business cards. We want you to find a way that talks about yourself that translates, right? But it's helpful to sometimes have these little other ones in the back of your pocket so you can bring them out for the audience that you're speaking with.
Good point.
So I bet you have a lot of questions. Maybe you'll have some questions in a day or two, next week sometime, right? And of course, in the workshop, we had the opportunity for you to ask questions in the chat box or to raise your hand. But if you have questions, please do contact William and I. We'll have a slide on that, right, at the end, how to reach us. So write your questions down and reach out. We'll be happy to talk with you and share our knowledge, because that is our purpose. And
Yeah.
I am more retired now. William's working full time. He's going to be busier, but one of us will help you.
Yes, this is true. This
Right?
is true. Yep.
All right. So your next step is to work with a trusted partner. Now, why? Because ideas and insights about your work and how to talk about it and going through these worksheets, when you are in dialogue with a trusted partner, you will be amazed at some of the things that pop through. And you go, something brilliant will pop through, and you go, God, I wonder who said that, right? Well, it was you. And so dialogue, being in dialogue with somebody around these worksheets is enormously helpful. And so please, take the opportunity to not just write it down yourself in these worksheets, but then try it out with a trusted partner and get like some even better ideas and like up level your work that you've done up to that point.
Now
You can,
this is, oh, go
yeah.
ahead. I'm sorry, Karen.
William, what did you want?
So this is important what Karen just said. I'm gonna tell you why. because you really do need to talk with another folklorist, someone who's doing work similar to yours. You can have separate practices, but that person's going to give you insight that you're not going to get without having those conversations. You need to have someone that you can have conversations with about the work, about shop, to pitch ideas to get feedback, to get a different understanding of what you might not be seeing. That individual you're talking to might be able to see a blind spot that you can't see, you know? Or they have additional experience in something that you're just getting exposed to. So that part is important. Be in dialogue with others. Make sure you're talking to other people in the profession. That's going to help you grow and explore innovative ideas quickly.
I'm going to add another one too, which is work with a trusted partner who is not in the profession. This is about learning how to talk to people other than folklorists, because folklorists, we all have an insider language. You know what we mean, right? But if you can't explain your work to someone who doesn't know what a folklorist is, then, you know, your opportunities are going to be limited. So the best thing to do is to do both. And I've used this method for many years, many years. And it is the best way to move for me. I have found for me to learn how to communicate what I do, because when you're working with a trusted partner, you are communicating. If you're working on a worksheet, which we do, because that's the first step, it's just talking to yourself, right? And it's valuable because that's your first step, but you need to work with a trusted partner and more than one from different places, right? Different occupations, so that you can get like more better, way more better than where you are today, right? And I tell you what, I still use trusted partners even after all these decades, because I keep learning and growing, and then I have to try things out with them, right? So make sure I can explain it well. And then test your stuff out with others, right? You'll get a lot of feedback. You'll see in somebody's eyes, they're glazed over. Okay, well, that didn't work. Or you talk to somebody about what you do, and all of a sudden you see the light come on, right? And you go, that worked. I'm going to keep doing that, right? So be in dialogue with others. We're beating this now to, you know, really banging on the nail on the head here all the time. But just keep going, right? This is an iterative process. Takes time, but hopefully by now you have all the tools that you need. Anything else, William, as we're moving into the close here?
Okay, I wanted to save what I have for closing. I'm pretty sure you have something good for closing too, but just be mindful that what you're doing is something that a lot of people never get the opportunity to do. That is so key. I mean, this really is something special, something unknown. And think about this. This is how you know you're dealing with something that's different from other individuals you meet in different professions. This particular profession, this is consistent. Every person has an origin story, you know? That's giving you a signal that this is something different. What's your origin story? How did you become a folklorist? How did you find out about folklore? This is something special. And I'll wait to deliver what I want to say once we get to closing.
Great. All right, super. Let's get there. So what we did today in this workshop, we talked about the commonalities of nonprofits and for-profits. So they're not such strange people and organizations. They actually have, you know, some things in common. And you can use those commonalities to shift from for-profit to nonprofit and back and forth again at your as you would like. We talked about the 6 ingredients for talking about yourself, gave you lots of worksheets and a few tools to get that done. We didn't have a discussion, but maybe you're having one in your own head, and that would be good. And you can always reach out to us if you need help. And again, if you have questions, do the same. And so I think we want to close with asking you like 2 questions. And after listening to this entire recording, like, what insights did you gain? Inquiring minds want to know, what insights did you gain? And Will, you want to do the last one?
Yes. And what are your main takeaways? What are some of the things that you heard today that made you say, oh, wow, I never thought about it like that? Oh, here's something I need to think about and focus on. What are your main takeaways from the workshop?
Right, right. So think about that. You send us an email. We want to know too.
Yes.
So here's the close. Right, closing with a quote from Salman Rushdie. This is one of my favorite quotes. Those who do not have the power over the story that dominates their lives, the power to retell it, to rethink it, to deconstruct it, to joke about it and change it as times change, truly are powerless because they cannot think new thoughts.
Mm.
So what we hope we've given you today is more power over the story about folklore, right? That you have may be living, and give you the power to retell it, to rethink it, to deconstruct it, joke about it, and change it as the times change, so that you can be so much more powerful in your career and think all kinds of new wonderful thoughts.
And I would just like to add this. Think about when you were a little kid growing up, what you thought you might be or what you thought you wanted to be, right? And now, today, think about what you're doing as a folklorist and think about the opportunities you have. Yes, it's not easy. Yes, it's difficult, but you're in a position to do things that you thought you would have never done, to go places that you thought you would have never seen. And this is all happening within the profession you chose. So remember this, it is very rare in this life, in this world, as a man or woman, that you have the opportunity to go through life, and when you come to the end of your journey, you know, I had the ability to leave the places I visited and was able to be exposed to a little bit better than what it was before. That in itself is a life worth living. Thank you.
Beautifully said, William. Thank you for adding that. Oh, great. So now, if you need to reach William and I, there you go. So that's how to reach both of us. All right. On that note, I think we are done. I want you all to go forth and prosper and reach out when you need to. And I think that's it for me. Anything else, William?
No, thank you all. I hope this helps a lot, and we're looking forward to seeing you all in the upcoming future programming that we will be providing.
Right.
Thank you.
So uh, have a good day, everyone. And I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.